Do you want to know the one thing that every struggling beginner has in common? They never start with people. Instead, they start with products. And that mistake alone is why they burn money and get zero result. I had a guy last month that spent $4,000 on ads for a revolutionary phone holder. And do you want to know what the problem was? Nobody wakes up thinking, I need a better phone holder. But people do wake up with neck pain from looking down at their phones all the time. See the difference? Because products don't make money. Solutions to painful problems, that's where the money is, okay? And the brands doing 7, 8, 9 figures, they didn't start with product. They started with a problem so painful that people were already throwing money at bad solutions. Then they built something better, and that's the game. So in this video, I'm going to show you how exactly they do it, the 3-step framework so that you can stop chasing products and start solving real problems. And by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly how to spot real opportunities, validate them without wasting money, and then build something that people actually want to buy. So let's jump right into it. So here's what happens with most beginners, right? They get super excited about e-commerce and they hear, someone making all this money selling like, pet products or phone cases or dog toys, water bottles. And they think, well, that seems easy enough. I can do that too. So they pick something similar. They build a random Shopify store and they wait for the money to roll in. And would you believe that it doesn't? Because they never ask themselves the most important question, which is what problem does this product actually solve? You're picking the solution before you even know what the problem is. I call this the solution tourism, right? You're wandering around, right, looking at some cool stuff, hoping that someone wants it. Meanwhile, real businesses are building highways straight to customers who are already searching for help. Step 1 is to find a real problem. You need to study the market like a detective, not like an entrepreneur with some vision to make a whole bunch of money, but like a detective that's looking for clues, right? You're searching for real pain, the kind of pain that actually keeps people up at night. And here's the key. You're not looking for what you think the problem is. You're looking for what the market tells you the problem is. So where do you look, right? You start with complaints, all right? Go to Amazon, find products in categories that you're interested in. Read the 1-star reviews. People don't leave 1-star reviews because they're bored, right? They leave them because something hurt, something failed, something didn't work the way they needed it to, right? You look at Reddit, you look at Facebook groups, you look at forums, you look at communities where people talk about their struggles. What are they asking for help with, right? What are they venting about? What solutions have they tried that maybe didn't work? Right? You study competitors' ads. What problems are they highlighting? What pain points are they touching on in the ads? If a brand is spending thousands of dollars running the same ad for months and months and months and months and months, it's because it's working, right? And that problem is real. Facebook Ad Library is basically a free market research database. If someone's been running an ad for 6 months and you can see it in there, it's probably profitable. Steal that problem, not the product, the problem they're solving, right? Let me give you an example. I worked with a supplement brand that was targeting chronic fatigue syndrome, all right? Now, most supplement brands, they talk about energy, they talk about focus, but this brand went very deep and very specifically into the condition. They studied forums where people with chronic fatigue syndrome talked about their lives. They read medical studies that looked at medications that doctors were prescribing. They found something unique and something powerful. These people, they weren't just tired, right? They were exhausted to the point where it was ruining their relationships, it was ruining their careers, and it was ruining their mental health, okay? The problem wasn't this surface level problem. It was deep, it was chronic, and always heavy on their mind. So when they launched their ads, they didn't talk about energy, right? They talked about the specific symptoms, how you feel when you have chronic fatigue syndrome, the brain fog, the muscle pain, the ability to even get through the normal day. And the people who had that problem, they saw those ads and they thought, my goodness, this is for me. And because the pain was so real and so constant, the advertising costs were lower the conversion rates were higher and the profitability was significantly bigger and better than average because they picked a real problem that people had acute awareness of. Step 2 is you've got to validate the problem, all right? So once you've identified the problem, the next step is to make sure it's actually worth your time, okay? Because the last thing you want to do is spend months and months and months building something only to realize that no one actually cares enough to buy it, okay? And so validation is about gathering evidence. It's about checking, does this problem have real commercial potential? Are people already spending money to solve it? Is there proof that this is a need to have and not a nice to have? That is a critical distinction. And so here's how you validate. First things first, check if the products already exist. If there are already solutions in the market, it's actually a very good sign because it means that people are buying, not the opposite, that it's too saturated. You don't want to be the first person trying to solve a problem because it means that the problem probably isn't big enough, or you're going to need to pay a lot of money to get people's attention. You want to be entering a market where people are already spending money, but where the existing solutions, they aren't good enough. So look for markets where the Amazon bestsellers have 3-star reviews, and that's kind of the sweet spot, right? Second, look at the intensity of the problem. And this is where you use what I call the "and then what" method. You take the surface level problem and you dig deeper and deeper and deeper. So let's say, for example, riddle me this, right? Someone's chronically tired, okay? And then what? Well, you can't focus at work. And then what? Their performance drops, they get passed over for promotions, and then what? They start feeling like a failure, their relationships suffer. Wow, you see what happened this end? You started with tired and ended up trapped and lonely by yourself. It's a completely different level of pain. And when you understand the full depth of the problem, you can speak to it in your marketing. So marketing legend Eugene Schwartz, he said, copy cannot create desire. It can only channel existing desire. So you're not out there trying to convince people they have a problem. You're showing them that you understand the problem they already have, right? I've got a client, and her name is Kayci, and she runs a brand called Pakks & Co., right? When we first launched this brand together, she was selling conversation cards, right? And that's how she, I guess, described them. Cards where, you ask a question to your partner and it helps you to create more intimacy. And so look, the product was fine, but the messaging, it wasn't connecting because conversation cards, it sounds like a fun activity. It sounds like a nice to have. And so what we did is we dug deeper and we asked, so what's the actual problem that these cards are really solving? And when we talked to her customers, we found something so much more powerful, right? These weren't just conversation cards. They were connection cards. People were buying them because their relationships felt distant, because they'd been together for years and the spark was fading and they wanted that intimacy back, but they didn't know how to get there. And that's the problem that people will pay to solve because that's urgent. No one wants to feel lonely. So we changed the entire messaging. We stopped talking about questions and started talking about rekindling intimacy, building emotional connection, reducing relationship anxiety. And her conversion rate doubled and her brand exploded. So by the time you finish validation, you should have a clear answer. Yes, this problem is real and people are already trying to solve it. Yes, the pain is deep enough that they'll pay for the problem. And only then, after you have all the evidence, do you move to step 3. Step 3, which is creating the solution. And so this is the part that most people start with, okay? But by now, you understand why it comes last. Now what you've done is you've validated the problem. You have 2 main paths. You can build a brand, your own version of a product, or you can build a fast test kind of dropshipping model. And the path you choose, it depends on what you're trying to build. Path A, building a brand. This is where you take an existing solution and you make it better. You improve the design, the quality, the packaging. You make it feel premium, like it was built specifically for that person with the problem we identified, right? Warby Parker, They didn't go out there and invent glasses. All they did is they solved the problem of overpriced, inconvenient eyewear shopping, right? Same product category, better execution, and they're now worth $3 billion, right? This path requires some upfront investment. You need to order samples, right? You need to test suppliers. You need to build inventory, but the payoff, right, is control. You control the quality, you control the customer experience, and you also control what customers think of your brand. And so this is the path that I recommend if you have some budget and you want to build something real, because brands solve problems better than generic products ever will, okay? And I'll talk you through path B, which is dropshipping, right? This second path is where you test fast and cheap, right? You list products, you run ads, and you just kind of throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. You're not building a brand yet. You're pretty much just experimenting. And look, dropshipping has its place, okay? If you're broke and you just want to learn the basics, it's a great way to get started with very low risk, right? You can test different products, you can test different problems, you can test different markets and see what people respond to, okay? But keep in mind, the quality might be terrible, right? The shipping might take weeks and your customers might have a horrible experience with the product that you sell to them. And because everyone is selling literally identical products, there's nothing special about your business, right? Dropshipping stores, look, they've got an average refund rate of somewhere between 10 and 30%, right? And in a branded business, generally speaking, it's between 2 and 4%, right? Because customer experience, I don't see it as a nice to have, it's a need to have, right? So dropshipping is useful for learning, but it's not a long-term strategy. If you want to build something that actually lasts, you need to move toward owning your own brand. So which path should you take? Well, it really depends on where you are at in your journey. If you have no money at all and you just need to get started, dropship, learn, test fast. But as soon as you can, transition into building a brand, because a brand built around a real problem is what creates a real business. So look, here's what it all comes down to. This entire game of e-commerce is not about finding the hottest product or the cheapest supplier. It's about finding a real problem that real people desperately want solved, because products come and go, right? Trends die, suppliers change, things move around, but a painful problem in a real market is something that you can build a business around for decades. When you pick products, you're gambling, right? You're hoping people still want what you're selling, right? But when you pick problems, you're not hoping, right? You know, because you have done the work, you've studied the market, you've validated the pain, you've gone deep into the research. And that's the difference between founders who struggle for months, right? And founders who build something that actually lasts for decades. So here's what I want you to do. Give yourself 7 days, read 100 one-star reviews, join 5 really small niche communities, find one problem that makes you think, how has nobody solved that problem yet? And that's your starting point. And then when you find that problem, validate it, right? Check if people are already spending money on it by way of other competitors. Check if the pain is deep enough using that and then what method to understand the full depth of what people are actually experiencing. And then make people feel like you understand them. Make people feel like your product was made specifically for them. Because when you do that, you'll never, ever, ever struggle to find customers. Customers will find you. So if this video helped you see e-commerce differently in the slightest, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. And if you're serious about building a real brand, I'll be dropping more videos on validation, branding, and scaling e-commerce businesses. I'll see you on the next one.